our favorite drag queen had comments on the public demonstrations, the nationwide public demonstrations and unrest in Iran.
Let me go back to this issue of
I have a lot to talk about on this.
future for the people of Venezuela. Yeah. Now, it's interesting. You mentioned all of the criminals and the people let out of prisons that were sent to our borders in our country. That's Trenday.
Oh my God, they talk
members.
so slow.
Criminals in the world were let into our country.
No terror ties.
Biden's open border policy. Anybody could come in.
And that will get into the issue of Minneapolis going on right now. But back to this one issue, do you foresee a Venezuela that will have free and fair elections? And I would have little doubt that the opposition would probably win handily if they were free and if they were fair.
Yeah, I do see that. I think that's happening. But before we do that, it's going to take a while to do. We have to rebuild the country. They couldn't have an election. They wouldn't even know how to have an election right now. The country's become third world, and they wouldn't know how to have an election right now. We're going to rebuild the oil, and the oil infrastructure will be in charge of it. It's going to do great. We'll make a lot of money, and we're going to take it from there, but we're going to rebuild the country, and ultimately you're going to have elections.
When you talk about increasing defense spending, I go back to the campaign, and I go back to your first term, foreign policy usually doesn't get a lot of discussion. And in many ways, you have dedicated a lot of time, energy, and resources.
Very important for our country.
How is that in America's first interest? Because that's what you stand for.
Well, like the Middle East was blowing up when I got in. Everybody was fighting everybody, which, in all fairness, has been going on for about 3,000 years in the Middle East. And we now have peace in the Middle East. Nobody thought that was possible. But you have some great countries, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, UAE.
I like how he lists just as an aside, I like how he lists the three, countries that he likes in the Middle East to be the ones governed by the wealthiest, most blatantly corrupt, like oil baron motherfucking, like slave drive nations in the Middle East. Unbelievable.
And many other countries that have been
also he's been like ingratiated by the leaders of these nations, so
they weren't able to do business. Tremendous wealth for the world.
I'm pretty sure you could, as long as you like butter him up, you could probably pitch him like any single idea. Like I don't know if any of y'all guys watched that that engagement that he had with that conference that he had with Zoran Mamdani about I think it was about a month ago, or whenever he got elected. And Trump was like vibing with him. you can say anything to this fucking guy, and you could probably get universal free transportation and healthcare in the United States if you like gassed him up enough and you told him that enough people would love him for it. But ultimately he's beholden to the interests and powers that be. So
the oil supply was hurt. Everything was hurt. I mean, you had things happening in the Middle East that were bad. Not only in Gaza with the death and the destruction going on for years, and it's been cleaned up. It's amazing. It's been cleaned up. Now there'll be some remnants right now. We're gonna have to see what happens with Hamas. We're gonna have to see what happens with Hezbollah and Lebanon. But we have 59 countries that signed on, and they want to go in and help if we should have to do something with Hamas, which is a possibility. Now, I think they're gonna do what they said they were gonna do. They were gonna disarm, but they've been armed for a long time.
They've been a little slow to disarm.
Yeah, they've been a little slow.
You support Israel? Will you put them on a timetable?
Well, I would, but first we'll see whether or not they're going to be disarming. Look, I'm all for it if they don't. They've made the promise that they were.
If they don't.
They've made an agreement that they're going to disarm, so we're going to have to assume that they're going to, but it's not their nature to disarm. It's not exactly their nature. Hezbollah has been very bad in Lebanon. But overall, I mean, we have an amazing situation compared to what it was, and we really do have peace in the Middle East. And I will say Saudi Arabia, Qatar, UAE, and other countries have been amazing. They've been, so helpful in getting it done.
Yeah.
The biggest thing was the attack on Iran. If you had a strong Iran, a respected Iran, a powerful Iran, like I guess it was at one point, a year and a half ago, you would.
So keep in mind, this fucking guy broke the Iran nuclear deal, which was, from a strategic perspective, insane. Because if you take it from the perspective of like American hegemony, why the fuck would we ever break the nuclear deal with Iran? That was it was perfect. If you're an imperialist power, right? And this is why like a fascist can never run a country. But if you're an imperialist power, right? Why would you ever do that? And now he's going to use it, and he has used it as leverage to there's been times where he's talked about like starting a new nuclear deal with Iran, like in the past. There's been times where he's waffled about Iran being a dangerous nation. Oh, Iran used to be so powerful, used to be so respected. Um, they, I, I think that he, well, I'll put it like this. I don't think that he thinks anything. I think that his administration is gunning right now to create like a second in terms of like utility, right? A second Saudi Arabia, like the utility of Saudi Arabia, they want to port that kind of relationship over into Iran with the reestablishment of a Shah like government, which by the way is not what um a large portion, and I've talked to Iranians about this, but it's not necessarily what Iranians want, which would be a return of the Shah, because Iranians fought that. There were many major developments that the Shah made in terms of industrialization, women's rights, stuff like that. But by no means was it a politically stable form of like politically stable administration. And we'll talk about this in just a minute after this interview, but there's a long history of protests and resistance, and I think what this administration wants is it wants to leverage, like the United States has done so many times in the past, it wants to leverage the opportunity of instability that is created by people resisting and wanting some form of both national stability and simultaneously a form of a sense of progress, or at least a return to a time of progression, which the Shah in some ways represented. This administration wants to take advantage of that. And we can already see how the Iranian government is responding to this, because they are also trying to claim that the protests are inspired by Western influence, Zionist influence, which is not true. That's a lie. But Trump wants to co-opt this. And I think this worries me a bit, because obviously like conservatives have no like geopolitical imagination, I guess, so they can't really have any discernment with when this fucking narcissist autocrat says that he wants to like liberate Iranians. Obviously he's like lying, but I'm also worried about how liberals will respond to this in much the same way that like that liberals responded to our invasion of Afghanistan, and our involvement with in the Iraq War and all that. It's fucking depressing shit, man.
The other countries wouldn't have been able to have that dark cloud hanging over them, and they by knocking out their nuclear potential, they would have had a nuclear weapon within 2 months. By knocking that, that's why I had to go in. Oh. Every president wanted to go in, and none of them did.
Ren, I honestly don't think America wants Iran overthrown. It would open up certain questions for the region that have been closed since the revolution. Yeah, I understand where... Hold on, let me make sure that this is focused. Come on. There we go. Okay. Yeah, no, I understand what you're saying. I don't think that... I think that there's two outcomes, though. Either they take advantage of the current governing administration in Iran being pressured and overthrown by the people of Iran as an opportunity to reinstall the Shah, which is possible because the ex-members of that government are already trying to buddy up with Trump. Justification for tolerating Israel in the U.S. has always been focused on countering the one great ideological threat. So if Iran really did get the shot back or anything except the Islamic Republic, it would probably make other governments in the region a lot more vulnerable to unrest. Yeah, but like, when have we cared about that before? Like, when has the United States cared about the installation of like when has the United States cared about statecraft, like destabilizing a region and creating, like, for example, like radical anti-West groups or whatever, like terrorist groups? I don't know. I just don't think that this administration is super like rational. But yeah, like I think I mean, I think it kind of speaks for itself here.
I mean, you didn't want to send cargo planes of cash and other currency?
That was terrible. I mean, I've never seen hundreds of millions of dollars were sent in cash on Boeing 757s. Beautiful Boeing 7. They opened, the cash was piled up to the ceiling. I never even knew a president could do that. How do you do that? What do you do? Call the banks? You know, they emptied out every bank in Virginia and Maryland to get that cash, and they sent it over there and gave it to them. No, we took the opposite approach, exactly the opposite approach.
Are you following the protesting that is taking place all over the country of Iran?
Yeah,
now?
I'm following it very
And have you read that the Ayatollah Ali Khamenei has a plan B to go to Russia?
Or someplace, yeah. He's looking to go someplace.
Do you believe that Iran, you think the country is on the verge of collapsing?
Well, it could be. I mean, what they've done is in the past,
I mean, I do. Yeah, the IRGC is fucking insane. Like, they're just incredibly destructive. They put down well, they're antithetical to the entire like pro-democratic movement of Iranians over like the last century. I'm not a supporter of the current regime in Iran. I don't know if it's an example of the misgivings of Islam. I think that's a loaded phrase, though. Again, I'm not a fan of like religious institutions or whatever, but I would be careful with that kind of language.
Started shooting the hell out of people, and all of a sudden people without any weapons whatsoever standing there and get machine guns gunning.
Thank you, everybody who's currently watching. I really appreciate it.
So they played rough, and I said, if they do that, we're going to hit them very hard. Well, we're going to hit them hard. We're ready to do it. If they do that, we're going to hit them hard. And so far, for the most part, there's been some of it, but for the most part, they haven't. There have been people killed. Some of them, the crowds are so big that some of them have had really, like, were stomped on.
Oh, literally, you know what? I saw a report earlier. I think it was CBS or CNN who was reporting on the violence against protesters in Iran, and they were saying that 78 people, and matter of fact, I think I have it right here. Hold on.
Iran is
Where is it? Oh, this is like 9 minutes. We'll get back to that in just a second. But they claimed that 78 people were killed. It was more like thousands. But yeah,
the enthusiasm to overturn that regime is incredible. But there's been people killed, but it's more from death by, it's literally stopping. It's people running in a certain direction. So we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens over there. They know, though, that it's a stampede. It's, I guess, the best word. They have like a stampede. You talk about stampede for cattle. But the people are stampeding, and you're losing a lot of people with the stampedes. There's so many people protesting.
Another thing that I wanted to point out here is listen to the way that he talks about Iranians. So he wants to, and you won't hear a peep from the woke mob about it. I'm the woke mob, Ace Man. So you did just hear a peep. Just saying. It's kind of awkward. Anyway, no, yeah. So the way that he talks about Iranians here is he references them as cattle, right? He calls them. He draws a comparison to cattle, and it's important because Trump does think of these people as like dirty sand people. I mean, he wants to turn Gaza into a fucking strip mall. He has obviously no respect for Arabs or Muslims or Iranians or Gazans or whoever else. He doesn't give a fuck about any of these people. But more importantly, like, he'll want to frame himself as a liberator while calling these people cattle, right? And I don't know if I've even heard like an outward fascist who was trying to leverage like this is a really unique way of talking about a group of people that you're trying to co-opt support for. It's such an interesting narrative strategy. Stampede fun fact: the term juggernaut comes from a mistranslation of the Hindu god Jagannath, and its connotation of unstoppable strength was from the large stampede which his festivals and parades would routinely have. That's really interesting. Thank you, Ren, for the fun fact. Familiar with Drake May's game? He pulled an incredible crafty move in order to get a first down. I'm gonna be real. Like, if that's like a pop culture thing, like, I have no idea what you're referencing.
Ran unnoticed that if they start shooting at them, these people are totally unarmed people, and they love their country. They want something to happen. Look at their country. They've gone back 150 years. But I've told them that if they do anything bad to these people, we're going to hit them very hard.
So if there is mass murder by the Iranian Ayatollah,
It's a playoff football. Yeah, I don't watch football. I don't watch like sports ball. I used to be really into baseball and basketball when I was younger, but I don't really get in on any of that. But that's cool. Well, that sucks for him. I'm really sorry to hear that, Ace Man.
and those leadership, you're pledging to the people of Iran that you will come to their aid.
I've said it very loud and very clear. Yeah, that's what we're going to do.
Yeah. So this is why I wanted to play.
You're playing golf with Lindsey Graham.
I did that for Lindsey Graham. He
Yeah. It says make Iran great again.
And what he means by that, because I said, this is a little tricky hat.
Yeah.
Why do you want me to sign this hat?
I don't know.
He's
Can I
really
auction
talking
this off
about
on
the
eBay?
Iranians.
Can I sell this?
Yeah,
It's probably worth a lot of money.
Got my signature.
Oh my God, these fucking ghouls,
And what he's
cocksucking.
talking about is the people that are, protesting. I guess is the only word you can use. It's really the biggest protest I've ever seen. The people that are protesting, if they take over the country, he wants to see if Iran can be great again. Years ago, a friend of mine was a developer from New York, and I was a young developer, and he went to Iran and he built buildings in Iran, and he made a lot of money, and he did very well. And it was like condos and rentals, and he loved Iran. He thought it was great, and he did a lot of work there. He did a tremendous amount of work. He loved the people. He thought they were so incredible. And then it all stopped when this stuff started happening.
1979.
Yeah,
then
it stopped like magic.
444
Yeah,
days.
so I think they're
Yeah.
gonna just continue waffling about. I really just wanted to get to the point where he said that he's fighting for people's liberation, because that's, come on, man, like let's be so fucking for real right now. Okay, so
escalating threats against the U.S. That's after President Trump offered his support to Iranian protesters as anti-regime.
Yo, why the fuck is this shit so
continue
quiet?
To rock Iran. The
Ow.
president posted on social media
Thanks.
yesterday, Iran is looking at freedom
CNN.
perhaps like never before. The U.S. stands ready to help. In response to Trump's
there was an era when Twitch poll was absolutely rocking hundreds of thousands of daily active viewers. Now it's currently 75 active viewers, 2016 to 2020. Now it seems to have moved to TikTok, potentially. Quote, the only thing people like less than missionaries are armed missionaries, Rob Spear. Hey, oh, Ace Man. Yeah, sorry, I didn't understand Twitch poll. Yeah, I think it's moved on to TikTok, but I'm here, so the only thing people, yeah, okay, I read that. We did have a guy in here earlier. I don't know if he's still watching. His tag was Rob Spear. He was spitting facts earlier. Oh, he's right here. Rob Spear in the flesh. Western countries are not directly involved in those protests, but Iranian people want to live like Western countries. Via internet, they see what is happening in the free world despite limitations. Take the example of Turkish series, hugely very popular in Iran with the liberal Muslim way of life. 30% of Iranians are Turkish speakers, and they are just jealous of Turkey's liberal way of life. Another example, each year 80,000 Iranians go to Turkey for vacation, and they do all the things forbidden in Iran, like drinking alcohol and dancing all night long. Yeah, I think that the framing of they want to live like the West, like I understand what you're saying by that. Excuse me. I understand what you're saying with that. I don't know if they want to live exactly like the West, though. I think there's a very unique pro-democracy movement that has been in cultivation in Iran for like about a century now. But there's some specific stuff I want to say about that.
Comments, Iran's parliament speaker told Trump that U.S. military and shipping centers would be considered targets. And this morning, the New York Times cites that multiple U.S. officials are saying that the president has been briefed on options for possibly striking Iran. In the meantime, at least 78 people have been killed in those protests. That's according to a U.S.-based human rights organization. We turn now to CNN's Paula Hancock. Paula, good morning to you. Communication blackout there continues. How is that, if at all, affect?
Tilly, secular, pro-democracy, definite separation of church and state. Yeah, no, they absolutely want a separation of church and state. I feel like that would be, I mean, they've been fighting for that for a really long time, but there is a definite necessity for that to happen.
These protesters.
Otherwise, you can never establish one without.
Well, Victor, it's certainly affecting the way that
risks,
they can communicate with
to put
each
it lightly.
other, although we don't see that that is impacting them on the ground at this point as the numbers appear to be growing. It is also impacting how they can talk to those outside the country. And as we talked about yesterday as well, there is this.
I'm going to speed this up a little bit because I want to get to the stuff that I want to talk about, but
brutal. We have had a number of protesters speaking to CNN.
I think it's important to show some on-the-ground coverage and to talk about it as we go.
Their names for fear of repercussions from the regime, but we spoke to one older couple who said that they had been looking out into the streets and they saw people.
And I want to talk about the framing as well.
And they then saw security forces brandishing military rifles that killed many people. We also spoke to another protester who said that when they went into hospitals, they saw, quote, bodies piled up. Now, this is something we've heard from a number.
Well, I'm not surprised, Ace Man.
Hospitals are struggling to cope
almost every
that have been injured just over the past few days.
Iranian national that I've ever talked to, as opposed to the IRGC.
He was trying to help a 60-year-old man who had 40 pellets in his leg, they say, and also a broken arm. They had to go to several different hospitals in order to try and find someone to treat him, saying that it was completely chaotic. We've heard harrowing narratives and descriptions from those within the hospitals as well, from doctors and those trying to treat patients. We did, though, hear from one protester who said that this was unstoppable momentum, talking about these protests, the fact that people are coming out onto the streets knowing that they may be risking their lives, but the anger, the frustration against this regime is strong enough that they are willing to come out in significant numbers. So unstoppable momentum is how one described it. And of course, they know also that they do have this international pressure, what we're hearing from the US president, and also significant pushback from the Iranian side, in fact saying that Trump should concern himself with problems in his own country. Victor?
Paula Hancock, thank you very much. Joining me now.
So it's actually really interesting too, because this is one of the casually throwing Dearborn, Michigan under the bus. I like the shots fired. Dearborn, Michigan is catching some strays. I'm not too familiar with the political demography of that, but that's funny.
Is Justin Logan. He's a director of defense and foreign policy studies at the Cato Institute. Justin, good morning to you. Let's start here with the threat from the president and the response from the Iranian regime. The president said that he hit Iran very hard if forced to kill protesters. The reports are that protesters have been killed. Some of this number is 78. Is it clear what the red line is?
So obviously it's not just 78. It's quite a bit more than that. I was actually happy that the previous commentator that they had on, the woman, she was a lot more she seemed at least a lot more antagonistic towards the Iranian government, but also wanted to make sure to throw in that line about and some antagonism towards Trump and his administration and like the co-opting of the movement. I think it's really important to hammer home that like we can't let them co-opt this movement, because we're just going to create this situation all over again, just under a different flag.
These protests emerged organically, first from economic distress inside of Iran and broadened to include the political illegitimacy of the Iranian regime.
It's always material conditions, man.
Always the risk that the subject changes from Iranians' discontent with their own people to what about all...
Hey, Robespierre, thank you very much. I really appreciate the follow. You've been excellent, and yeah, please tune in again. I am streaming regularly now. A lot of people watching aren't don't know this, but I tried streaming like a year ago, and my internet was so garbage. Straight up 3 megabytes a second upload speed. Now we're good to go. We're good to go.
You may be asking yourself, what exactly does this have to do with the Anunnaki?
Thank you so much for following the channel. I really appreciate it, Ace Man. You've been great so far. I'm really glad that you joined the community, man. Peace, love, and apple pie, Rob Spear. Peace, love, and apple pie. Take care.
Bombs falling around us too. So I think there's a real danger here were Trump to engage in some sort of large-scale military action that could succeed in changing the subject and inadvertently relieving some pressure on the regime itself.
New York Times is reporting that the president has been briefed on military options for strikes in Iran. This isn't like striking the Iranian nuclear program where those targets are easily identifiable. What's plausible that gets to the support of the Iranian people, those protesters?
So anything is plausible, I regret to say, but I think that leadership knows
too old to be deployed to the sandbox, too young to be deployed to the sandbox, just in time to be deployed to the sandbox, man.
Right? You're not targeting, as you pointed out, nuclear sites that are clear, we know where they are and fixed. So there's always some danger if you have bad intelligence and you believe that you're targeting some sort of paramilitary barracks that you hit an apartment building or something of this nature. So it would really turn in important ways on the quality of the intelligence.
I think
Joining us now is the top Democrat on the Senate Intelligence Committee.
I wonder how they're gonna I wonder how Israel feels about this. I'm being so for real, because I actually haven't seen, because I've only seen like American-oriented narrativization of this, but I haven't really looked into like what the Zionists are talking about or like what their whoops, didn't mean to move that. I haven't seen what the Zionists are talking about and like their position in all of this bullshit yet, but I guess we'll see, yeah.
Senator Mark Warner. Thank you so much for joining us, Senator. So the New York Times has reported that the president's been briefed in recent days on...
You ever heard of the Millennium Challenge military exercises? No, what's that? For the coup in 1979, Israel and Iran were allies. Was the U.S. drilling for war with Iran, and when the losses were projected to be extremely high, they just banned the Iranian team from using most of their technology? They learned nothing. No, they did not. They did not learn anything, man. Yeah, I didn't know about this. The Millennium Challenge military exercise. Drilling for a war with Iran. We're projected to be extremely high. They just banned the Iranian team for using most of their technology. Yeah. Well, that was part of the problem that like I have with like if I'm gonna take the position of an imperialist, I know I just talked about this just a little bit ago, but like why would you cancel the Iran nuclear deal? I just throwing that one out there into the void.
Military strikes against the Iranian regime, though President Trump is said to have not made a final decision. Are you hearing anything? You're the vice chair of the Senate Intelligence Committee. Do you think it's likely that the administration will move forward with any military action, and should that?
Oh, Iran's not happy about this, by the way. Well, the Iranian government.
We don't have great visibility into Iran, and Iran has shut off the internet over the last few days. But if we step back for a moment, Jake, let's look at this. This president, in less than 1 year in office, has used the American military to launch strikes in 6 different countries: Syria, Iraq, Iran, Yemen, Nigeria, Venezuela. He's got 20% of the American fleet.
Oh, no, absolutely, Tilly. It is a distinction that's necessary to make. I mean, one common mistake in like basic political analysis that a lot of people make is that they confuse frequently the state with its people. Never in a million years would I ever equate like the opinion of or like the position of a nation's people with the positions of its state, but very frequently it is the state that will always want to leverage a narrative of the people's will as like they are the arbiter of the people's voice. They are the mouthpiece for the people.
off the coast of Venezuela, blockading that country. He wants to increase the military budget by 50% to $1.5 trillion. How does that affect anybody's cost of living? What does that say to young people around the country, which may mean American troops could be deployed all over the world? And this was the president who was supposed to take us out of a lot of foreign wars. I don't get it. I don't understand what his overarching...
Hey,
policy is,
Leon,
other
it's
than
nice to
don't
see
piss
you
off
in
Donald
chat.
Trump.
So you
Really
don't
appreciate
support
you
any
joining
national
in. Thank you so much.
I think we should put along with others around the region, as much pressure and support of the Iranian people. But the idea of military strikes, Jake, I know it goes back. The last time America intervened militarily in Iran was 1953, when a CIA-led coup overthrew the Iranian regime to protect oil, by the way. And that ultimately, most historians...
Hey, it's good to see you, fellow leftists in chat. Really appreciate that I'm hitting my core audience right now. Thank you for joining in.
Only half the nation is Persian heritage. We ought to do that carefully, and I don't think we have enough visibility at this point.
Right now, we're just covering some news, and we're talking about Iran.
6 different nations in less than a year.
Former President Obama has expressed...
Just inquiring where we are on overthrowing Trump. Yesterday. I want it done yesterday.
for not more aggressively supporting Iranian protesters back in 2009. If you don't support military action beyond sanctions, what should President Trump do right now to support the Iranian people?
Blue balls.
I think there are ways to call upon the international community, which, by the way, because we walked away from the JCPOA, doesn't have as much international support. I do think the strike on the Iranian nuclear facilities was successful, but as we showed, it didn't obliterate the facilities, and public reporting has said Iran's in the process of building back its capability. But the idea, and I want to know what the president's talking about. Is he simply talking about another airstrike? Is he talking about boots on the ground in Iran to take out military facilities? When we've already, remember, we've got 20...
I've heard about that, Leon. What's her name again? That fucking, very same stuff that you have, except now it's under control. Yeah, but you people riot, like, over anything, which I'm really, jealous over. Like, I wish we would take up a lot of the same attitude. But Americans, never gonna walk out of their suburbs. They can't even walk to get to, they can't even walk down to Main Street to protest, okay? They have to drive 45 minutes just to get there, stop for gas twice, sit in traffic for 2 hours, and by the time they get down to Main Street to protest, then, protest is over. Police have already tear gassed the entire area, and now it's a dead zone. Ace Man, did you listen to the interview with one of the few surviving Venezuelan security officers protecting Maduro? The U.S. has terrifying, unfathomable capabilities. Well, I know that the U.S. has insane capabilities. I'm not sure that this administration is competent enough to weaponize those capabilities, but I think that the kidnapping of Maduro came down less so to our actual military capabilities and some behind-the-scenes deal we would have had to have made, because despite the fact that we have incredibly competent people on the American side of operations, Maduro was guarded by people who were trained by Cubans, who have been well trained since the Soviet era of Cuban relations. So they have a lot more experience. They're not like a ragtag group of loyalists or whatever. There were people protecting Maduro who were incredibly skilled, and Maduro was in a fucking government fortress. So I think that there was some stuff that had to go on behind the scenes in order for it to happen as smoothly as possible, because you also have to think about how Mikado was not put up as president of Venezuela, or even considered as president to be the next president of Venezuela, and rather it was the VP who was stepped up to be president of Venezuela. I mean, I believe that we probably have access to that. I haven't really looked into it, but I think that if you have the first-hand account, I would like to check in on it. If you have a link or something that I can look at. But I feel like Maduro had to be made to be vulnerable. Something had to happen to allow him to be vulnerable in order for all of that to play out exactly how America wanted it to. European method of trying to keep the far right out of power is going to be just banning popular figureheads from participating, since they are too afraid of backlash just to ban the parties. Leftist tradition that is very much present. Yeah. So that 20 Rangers wiped out hundreds of officers in minutes. I mean, like, I can believe that. I just feel like I'll listen to the first-hand account. I would like to like get access to that. It's internal betrayal. The Maduro thing has to be Maduro had to know USA could try something like that. Well, yeah, that's what I'm saying. There's no way that like Maduro had to be caught at a very vulnerable period. Well, I think the reason why I want to see it so bad is because I just want to make sure that I'm not being narrativized to here. I don't doubt that the United States has incredible like capabilities at their disposal whatsoever. I don't doubt that at all. But you also have to, you know, we have to curb our how do I put this? Marvelization of things happening. So, unique thing about France, if you had so many different government types, 5 republics, 3 monarchist movements, 1 fascist dictatorship, and a brief communist uprising, and a historically powerful communist party, almost any political tendency can claim itself as French. True. My tidbit to y'all's conversation, Ren, Napoleon should have finished the job. So, I wanted to talk about a couple things that I've been thinking on regarding a truc, if you will. I want to talk about a couple things regarding Iran personally. So, number one, the scale of the protest. Protests have kind of erupted across Iran. I think it's around 174 locations in what is it? Iran has 31 provinces, and about 28 of the provinces have had like massive protests which have erupted all across Iran. I've seen a lot of downplaying of the scale of the protest. And I also have seen like notes on how the Iranian regime is trying to play this off as this is like something from the West or Israel, like talking about some color revolution type rhetoric. However, Iran, as many of the people who are watching this may know, has had a very long history of movement for democracy. Now, the things that I'm going to talk about, I'm not exactly sure how to pronounce everything. I wrote a couple notes to kind of keep me on track here, but we're going to go from there. So, the modern movement for Iran's democracy, or for democracy in Iran, was set in motion during the late Qajar period. It was in 1890 that Nasser al-Din Shah granted a British company the ability to grow, sell, and export tobacco. This gave them a monopoly over the Iranian export, and it kicked out literally thousands of people from their primary source of income. So if you combine this with various territorial losses, heavy taxation, and what was the other word that I was looking for? Nepotism, resource mismanagement, etc. This kind of leads to what were called the tobacco protests. Iranians stopped using tobacco and selling tobacco, and at one point it became like it, you know, there was a total boycott across the country, and I promise this is all relevant to where we're at today. But then you have merchants who organize these boycotts across all the major cities. So then you have citizens ignoring the Shah's initial attempt to enforce these deals. Clerics had declared that the usage of tobacco was haram. This would later get overturned. And you have this really long history of protest in this sense. The British company, by the way, was unable to operate, and the Shah was forced to like overturn the deal. So we have a history of protests that work in Iran. And I really want to point this out because Iran's protests are not like America's protests. It's a really great comparison to go between the two, because Iran's protests, and when people protest, like the things that they do matter, the action they take matters, right? Over here in the United States, a protest is like trying to sneeze on concrete to get it to a road. Like it does almost virtually nothing in most instances. I think it's madness that we are still dealing with the consequences of colonialism today. Very much so. Very much so. But it takes active like effort on part of an entire hemisphere to recover from that kind of thing. So we have in terms of a culture, we have a relatively united Iran at this time that I'm talking about here, like the early 1900s, across its social, ethnic, and political lines, against just straight up autocracy. And so when they moved to get their rights protected, then it was in around 1905 that Muzaffar let me read the name here so I get it correctly. Muzaffar ad-Din Shah once again tried to give away exclusive rights to Iran's sugar crops and to private and royal entities. So protests broke out in Tehran's bazaar, and these were met by military force. So these demonstrations ended up leading to the formation of Iran's first constitution. In 1906, Muzaffar was forced to establish the parliament along with the constitution as well. So as protests move forward, then we have a supplement to the constitution, and that supplement was the establishment of the separation of powers. And then you had Muhammad Ali Qajar attempting a coup in 1908. He tried to suspend the constitution. That failed. And then you have corruption, bankruptcy, and the Qajar dynasty. And this is when you get involvement of Britain and Russia during World War I, kind of moving in and occupying territory in Iran. So much later, right, you have this parliament in 1906, and under the 1906 constitution, after a fucking 11-year-old who was the Ahmad Shah came to power, he left to grow up in Europe. And once he came back in 1925, he had poor leadership skills, and he was deposed by parliament vote. And that led to, what the fuck is his name? Reza Khan, to be appointed as the new king of Iran. And this kind of moves forward with the next stage of the Iranian pro-democracy movements, right? So Then, with the occupation of Britain and Russia in Iran, you have the prime minister, Mossadegh, appointed into parliament in 1951 by Reza Pahlavi. And then I have it written here, Western powers which had long had an exclusive monopoly over Iranian oil were angered by Mossadegh's reversal of an Anglo-Iranian oil company back into Iranian hands. So Britain would then pressure the United States to intervene, and the CIA and MI6 devised Operation Ajax. So I want to write that one down specifically because it's important. And Aceman in particular, I am not a fan of this U.S. administration. I think you might be talking to somebody else, though. But anyway, so you have a coup that happens in the 1950s in Iran, and anti-American and British sentiment kind of becomes entrenched in the nation, and some begin to see the Shah as kind of being under Western influence, which it is. Now, there were land reforms, literacy reforms. There were, was I a big Kamala Harris kind of guy? No, not at all. And so you have land reforms, literacy campaigns, women's rights reforms, industrialization, all of that stuff. That was a byproduct of the governance of the Shah, but that didn't stop there. There were weakening of Iran's parliament. I mean, I'm happy that a socialist is mayor of New York. What, Ren, you don't like Mamdani? Okay. Y'all keep talking. I got a history lesson that I'm giving here. So, anyway, in the Pahlavi's rule over the Shah, well, thank you, Ace, man. I really appreciate that. The Pahlavi's rule, like, during the Shah, led to the erosion of parliamentary strength, I guess, in Iran. And that led to the repression of political dissent and other such, distasteful things. So in 1978, his troops ended up firing on protesters in Tehran's Jaleh Square and killed dozens. And then after that, you have the current, I guess, leader of Iran emerge from exile, which is Khomeini. So he promises an end to corruption, and he does like the Lenin thing. And as soon as he gets into power, we see what happens. So that all kind of falls apart. The IRGC is formed in 1979, and it's separate from the Artesh, and the whole point of the IRGC is literally like a loyalist militant group. And then, he bans liberal, leftist, monarchist parties. He goes through and he starts talking about some bullshit for crushing political dissent. And then in 1988, he issues that fatwa to kill 30,000, or not 30,000, sorry, 10,000 of his opponents. And those people are now in unmarked graves all across Iran. And then there's in my notes, I have this other guy, Ibrahim Raisi. He was made Iran's president, and then became part of the 1988 Death Commission overseeing the executions. Then the Ayatollah Ali Montazeri, he at one point was an ally of Khamenei, but he starts speaking out. He was part of the highest religious rank allowed in Shia Islam, and due to his criticism, he was put under house arrest, and then due to changes in like laws that they made, a far lower ranking cleric took over his position essentially. So the promises of the Islamic Republic that Khomeini originally gave never established. So one example of this is that the government foundations were called the Banyada, had been set up and under the pretense of like charitable work. And since they were so unregulated, it allowed like companies to devour like land and resources and buy land and resources from Iran. And Khomeini was the overseer of like all of this. Then you have like environmental experts who were pursued and silenced as a byproduct. And here we are today. That's a pretty like massive oversimplification. There's so much stuff that happened in between, but that was like a couple of notes that I just wanted to point out to kind of give historical context leading up to where we are. And that kind of leads into our next thing, which is let's take a look at what some Iranians are saying online. Yes, Ren, they did suffer some unbelievable famines. So the wellness therapist, I don't like everything that she says. I don't agree with her on everything, but she is Iranian and she is very close to the situation, and she puts a lot of effort and work into the things that she talks about and shares. So I think that she is a worthy source of information to pull from. And I have a personal testimony from here on Instagram. So I am Iranian. I come from a socialist family that fought the Shah, protested openly, and paid for it. My father was tortured and imprisoned. I personally hold leftist and progressive ideals, not as theory, but as lived history on how to exist in the world. What I am watching now from Western leftist tankies is not solidarity, it is gaslighting. You are browbeating Iranians and insisting that a people's revolution, one that has been building for 46 years under mass surveillance, executions, and terror, is somehow a US or Israeli production. This is not analysis, it is ideological laziness. Iranians understand imperialism. We have endured foreign intervention, sanctions, coups, and proxy violence for generations. But more than that, we understand cults. We recognize them because we have been forced to live inside one or watch our families be brutalized by one for nearly half a century. We know how cults speak. We know how they erase dissent, flatten reality, and replace moral clarity with rigid dogma. Many of you are not resisting power. You are inside an ideological cult of your own making, one that demands obedience, punishes deviation, and treats real human suffering as an inconvenience to theory. We want no part in it. And I do want to extend here that I don't think that this just applies to Western leftist tankies. I think there's a wide variety of liberals and conservatives and people who fall within the purview of the criticism that she's levying here. So this is why I think it's really important to kind of give an ear to her voice and many voices like her. Your insistence on denying Iranian agency is doing more damage to the left than any right-wing infiltration ever could. When you reduce our uprising to a foreign conspiracy, you are not opposing empire, you are repeating its oldest trick, speaking over the people who are actually bleeding. This behavior is pushing more Iranians away from the left than any right-wing infiltration ever could. Oh wait, nope. Let's see. Oh, I see what happened. She was just repeating herself. When you dismiss our lived history, our agency, and our self-determination, and are dead by reducing our uprising to a foreign plot, you are not standing in solidarity. You are erasing us. You are doing the work of the CIA for free. You are the op. Who needs COINTELPRO when there are leftist tankies insisting that our people don't have the ability to stand up and resist the regime they have been fighting for years without outside influence? You guys are driving people from your own movements away in hordes, and your groups are becoming smaller and smaller. But who cares about that, right? Not as long as you get to sound condescending and self-righteous. I really like this. There's a lot more. And if you want to read the rest of it, I think that you should go to her page on Instagram, The Wellness Therapist. I really like this because it demonstrates a particular frustration that I could word myself, but I'm not Iranian. I cannot speak to a lived experience there. And so I cannot speak to the direct frustration that I must feel if somebody who was supposed to be on my side for my autonomy and my liberation, and even for the people who aren't, who still make claims like the ones that she's criticizing, I think that it would make me feel sick, sicker than it makes me feel now. And I'll put it like this. I said last stream that there were many Venezuelans who have been seen supporting the American invasion of Venezuela, who were welcoming the American invasion of Venezuela and celebrating the kidnapping of Maduro. And I have been given no evidence that this has at any point been the vast majority of Venezuelans. I think that it is true that Venezuelans are probably relieved or happy that, you know, there's a lot of Venezuelans that are happy that Maduro is gone. But I think that a great deal of the ones that we have seen are people who follow or were aligned with the opposition party, led by Mikado or other such groups. I find it concerning when we focus on the voices of, without discernment, the voices of people in nations and regions that are struggling. Because again, without discernment, then you run into an issue where I could postulate, for example, why would I ever tell a French person who is wondering about the affairs of American politics, why would I ever point to an American for a French person to listen to on the issues of American politics? I really would want that individual to have discernment when listening to American voices, right? Because there is about half of the country that does not have a connection to reality, frankly. So I would not trust American voices on American politics without a great degree of discernment. And I think the same kind of caution needs to be taken here when we see influxes of people welcoming imperialist intervention into a country that is struggling due to regimes that they are suffering through on their own. To me, it's disgusting because it's a narrative weaponization of the struggles that Venezuelans, Iranians are going through. Imagine when Trump was talking about Gaza and turning Gaza essentially into like a strip mall. Imagine if the narrative there was that they were trying to liberate Gaza. And you had the few wealthy Gazans who would be okay with this. The few that, because there are a couple, so the few that there are, like, would you listen to those voices and not the tens of thousands of Palestinians and Gazans who are actually like suffering through imperialist violence? That's insane, you know? Ren, Maduro is gone, but the party state built by Chavez is still in power, so it's unlikely anything will change for good. I mean, the VP, even for this new iteration of Venezuelan administration, is verbally antagonistic towards the US, but like the United States would have only let her step up to the plate and accept the position of like lead executive of Venezuela if they knew that she was going to comply. And she will. She will comply and capitulate, even if outwardly she voices dissent, because she is not actually either in a position to oppose or cares about opposing. That's been the norm, though. Chavez was happy to sell Bush oil while nominally denouncing him. Yeah. So there's that. I'm just sick of people pretending like the United States intervening into Venezuela, invading Venezuela, and taking it over is going to be beneficial to them. It's literally textbook, I am 12 and my politics are for 12-year-olds. That is what it is. There's a couple of other things that I did want to talk about, but we are currently at the end state for the stream, so we're gonna wrap up some stuff here. If I can get my camera to focus. Okay. So, in sum, we have covered a lot today. I will be back tomorrow for another stream. I think that the state of the world is, I think everybody, everybody feels that it's very scary. But if we don't talk about it as leftists, if we don't move forward and try to grow our voice to weaponize a narrative, not just get our voice out there, right? Not just to talk about the things that are going on, not just to protest against the things that are going on, but if we don't actively weaponize the narrative, this goes beyond culture war nonsense. This goes beyond all of that. The narrative that we are the great American enemy, if we don't weaponize that and utilize it to its fullest, we will be thrown to the dustbin of history. And as American leftists, for those of you watching or for those of you who have listened, it is more important than ever that we do not offshore the responsibility of being at the seat of hegemonic power, right, to people less privileged than us, or hope that, for example, I know a lot of leftists are like infinite genocide to America, KKK, like whatever, like the global South will rise and revolt. I get it. Like I get the like leftist like jingoism or whatever, but actual change, not LARPing, like actual healthy, real change can only occur when we understand how we're being narrativized and how we can weaponize narratives to create new avenues of convincing people. Because it's not debates that convince people. It's not conversation that convinces people. It's monopoly over how history is told and how the present moment is told. And if we can acquire that monopoly, that is the step forward that we need to take. So I'll just leave it at that. I wanted to thank everybody for joining the stream. Y'all have been excellent, wonderful. I love you all so very much. We had a lot of followers join in today, and y'all have been fantastic. Again, thank you so much for watching.